Welcome to Advertising Design and Branding. Today we're going to talk about color theory. And the reason I call this Color 101 is because color is a very complex thing. You can study it for a really long time and still there would be new things to learn. So I think most of us think color is simple. It's just make the colors that they're supposed to be. Like an apple is red, grass is green, the sky is blue. All of those things are true, but there are so many nuances to color. So let's just dive right in. Let's start at the beginning. I'm going to talk about this color wheel. There are so many colors that can be made from the primary colors. The primary color is the color that can't be made by mixing two others. You can't mix two colors and get red or yellow or blue. Those are the very basic building blocks of color. And so they're sort of the bedrock that everything else is built on. Remember these are primary colors. The color that you get when you mix primary colors like yellow and red together are considered secondary colors. That's the second level from of the colors from that bedrock of primary colors. So you can see these are just simply mixed from those primary colors. Then the next level is you take the secondary colors and you mix those together and you get the tertiary, which is hard for me to say, colors. They're the third level of the colors. And so that's what makes up our color wheel. Now you'll see really complex color wheels and it's just lots and lots of stuff, but this is the bare bones color wheel. So the next thing that we need to talk about as far as the color wheel goes are complementary colors. You take one color, and it doesn't have to be primary. You take one color, put it together with the color that is exactly opposite on the wheel, and that's called a complementary color. It could stand for, a complementary color is like, here's the tertiary and another tertiary, and those are complementary colors. You go around the entire wheel, and whatever is exactly opposite is the complementary color. That doesn't mean that that's the only colors you should do because they're complementary. That's kind of a misleading word. What it basically means is that you put them together and they're going to really vibrate against each other, like red and green. If you put those together, they're going to make your eyes kind of water because it's going to vibrate. It's a very intense partnership. So be careful when you're using those. Then we're going to talk about then harmonious colors are the next thing. And it's basically the colors that they're right next to each other. So really these colors will go together automatically because they all basically have the same baked in DNA. And that's true of the whole of any color that are next to each other on the wheel. The next color that we separate from the color wheel are the warm colors. Those are the kind of the colors of the summer. I know that you can use orange for the fall and stuff like that, but still those are considered warm colors. So those are for bright, cheery things, for things that you want to really pop. You want to have some real, and that comes into the psychology of it, like action and color and pop, and it just really energizes. And on the opposite of that, we have the cool colors. Those are the ones that are calming, and it makes you kind of, you just suddenly take a nice deep breath and you're more relaxed. They're calm. Um, so those colors are really good whenever you're trying to make someone feel really comfortable and calm. So here's our whole color wheel. It has all of the different colors together without any circles or anything on them. So this color wheel is in your workbook if you want to have it as a reference if you ever need a color wheel. I like this color wheel because it's kind of no nonsense. There's not just a gazillion colors in there, and it's just very basic. So color also has a psychology. So I have this little chart here that I find um, very helpful. It tells you what people mostly think about red or orange or yellow or green or any of these. And I'm going to go over the red and the black since those are our school colors. So excitement, strength, love, energy. Those are all good traits. And black, formality, dramatic, sophistication, and security. I would definitely agree with all of those words. Green, nature, healing, freshness. Remember we said that green is kind of the color of poison? Well, it kind of is because colors have lots of different personalities. How many of us have spent the day on have spent a red flag day outside? It is not a pleasant thing. You get a lot of grit in your teeth because that basically means that there is a fire danger. So red flag warnings are not exciting. But even though our psychology list says that red is exciting. And here is green, vibrant and new life and all that kind of stuff. And it's also poison, which can end that new life. And yellow is caution, and orange is warning. So you have to just be aware of how the color is going to be used, and especially in culture, because each culture has a different variation of what they think of different colors. For instance, um, black in our culture, it's also sophisticated, but it represents death and mourning. But in the Far East, it's health and it's prosperity. So you have got to know who your audience is and be sure that if you have an international audience, that you are aware of what the colors mean in that particular part of the world or that particular sector of your audience, because you want to make sure that you are giving the correct messages to your audience. So let's talk about color in relationship to Adobe Creative Suite. We're going to have 4 color modes. The first one is RGB. That's the color mode that your computer uses. I mean, you're looking at a screen right now, watching this video, and all of those colors are being made with light. So that's one color mode, RGB. CMYK is a color that is used whenever you're printing, and it's a subtractive color, while RGB is an additive color. I'll explain more later. Pantone is a matching system that you use if you're wanting to print one color or if you're printing t-shirts or something. The way that that system works is you need to have solid blocks of color. And then the final one is hex colors. That's the colors that programmers use because they're considered friendly to computers. So let's start with RGB. RGB has 3 channels because there's 3. There's red, there's green, there's blue, and each one of those are a channel. It'll make more sense when we get into Photoshop. So if you have a dark room, no light at all, that means that is the color of black. No light equals black. And in RGB, that color in that channel is represented as a 0. So since there are 3 channels, you have 3 zeros to represent the color black in RGB. You flip on the light switch, and now you have 100% light. And so with the channels of color, you've got 3 channels and you've got 255, because that is the absolute maximum that you can have in RGB. So RGB assigns a color to each pixel. That's how you get the colors. If you get really close to a screen, you can see the individual pixel. You might have to use a magnifying glass, but you can see each little pixel is exactly one color, and they blend together in order to make the different colors. And it's considered an additive color because it's light-based. So let me get to the next slide and maybe you can see a little better here. My favorite band. I wear this shirt anytime I'm teaching in person for this particular lesson. But you can see on the left-hand side, the white light is going in and it gets separated in the prism, which is the triangle. And then you've got the rainbow color coming out. And that is because the more light you add, the more white it's going to be. So let's go on to CMYK. There's C is for cyan, which is a type of blue, but it's not really that blue. It's kind of closer to teal in probably most of our, um, well, how we define colors. Then magenta is not exactly red either. It's more of a really bright pink. And then yellow, of course, is yellow. And then black, of course, is black. But wait a second. We're calling it K. Why are we calling it K? Um, some people say that it's because if we called it CMYB, people would get confused and think that was blue. Well, yeah, but honestly, CMYK was around before we had RGB. When you're printing with CMYK in a big printing operation, you will have four different plates. And yes, they use a metal plate. I wish that I could take you to a printing shop so you can see it. If you get an opportunity to go take a tour, absolutely go to it because it will really explain a lot more than I'm able to do with just my voice. So you have one plate that has all the blue dots that you need, another plate with magenta dots, and so on and so on. And so the reason that we call it K is it stands for key. It is the key plate, not the black plate, but the key plate. And they do print that one in black ink, but the key information is on that plate. The the job number, the due date, the amount of things that need to be printed, the name of the customer. It's all that sort of information is on just the black plate because it's the one that you need to have all that information. So instead of it being, it's cyan, magenta, yellow, and key, actually, although we do say black. And it is a pigment color because paint, you paint and it's a pigment. So that means that if you were to have big circles of all these colors, the center where they overlap is black. If you were doing this in light, the where they overlap is white because the more you add additive color, RGB, the whiter it gets. CMYK, the less ink you have, the whiter it is. So it's exactly opposite. I hope that helps you remember. And now here we have the plates. So these are not going to be in the blue on the actual metal plates, but this kind of represents what colors you've got that all go together to be a four color print, a four color, full color, four color print. So another do don't. Do understand the difference between additive and subtractive mixing. And here is that again. This is the RGB. There's white in the center where all of them overlap. Here's CMY, and they left the K off of this one, but it's a real muddy, dark color in the center. Now we're moving on to the Pantone color system. It's a Pantone matching system. People call it PMS for short. And the reason that this was created was because of matching. People were trying to get things printed, and as technology increased and all that kind of stuff, it was getting to where people were printing in full color more often than they had in the past. And like if you wanted to print in one color, the red would have to be mixed, and they didn't always match. There was always a problem with matching the colors that were not um, in the CMYK spectrum. So in 1963, this system was invented, and it was to make the colors consistent, like for companies like IBM who want a specific blue, or Tiffany who wants a specific blue, or Texas Tech who wants a specific red. And consistency, no matter where they got something printed, it would be the right color. So each color has been assigned a number, and there is a recipe along with that color. There's a book that printers use. It's called a Pantone matching system book. And you can see there's literally thousands of colors, and they keep adding more all the time. I think they're up into actually the 3,000 number now. But each one of these colors can be created by the printer. And now they don't have 3,000 cans of PMS ink so that they can match these exactly right. What they do have is they have the mixing kit. They get, there's a several, I don't have the names of them. The Rubine Red is one of them. But anyway, they have all these colors that they can use as the basic recipe, kind of like those primary colors that we were talking about. And with the little recipe that's right here below the chip, they can add the right ratio and get that color. And that's so that no matter where you go, you tell them your PMS color and they can match it. And it's a really great system. So what's it used for? Well, in print design, it's for spot color. Because if you were to want to print something that was red and black, but you only wanted to print two colors, you would have to use a spot color, which is Pantone. Um, if you were to just print it, and had black and red, then they would split it up into three plates. There would be the black plate and then the magenta plate and the yellow plate to make up what that spot color is. So this is to save you money using Pantone. It's used a lot in logo design so that your logo will always have the exact right color, and of course branding. So Texas Tech, that their red is Pantone 485. And so that color is what everybody is supposed to follow. It's if you're separated by an offset printer and you're using 485, it will only be one plate. If you are dividing up, um, it has to be a special recipe. So they try and keep that 485. Okay. So the specific times that PMS are used is in two color design or designing for silk screening, like t-shirts and that sort of thing. Whenever that process has to have, you have to use Pantone colors in screen printing. And last but not least, we're going to touch on hex colors. Hex colors are those computer friendly, web friendly colors. And I think it's mainly web friendly because some other colors have a tendency to not look quite so good. I think this is getting to be a little more old school with the better 4K and 8K monitors and all that kind of stuff. It's not an issue quite as much as it was at one time. But let's look at the hex colors. So this is black. In RGB, we remember that RGB is 000 for black. Well, in hex, it's actually 6 letters of 0 to make black. Just like RGB, if for white is this, and then FFF, whatever, is the color for white in hex. And so you can see that there's a variation. There's some similarities, but there's 6 letters. And if you ever do any coding, or if you ever have to go in and fix some coding and you want to fix colors, hex is what you're going to have to use. Okay, one final thing about colors. When you're choosing colors for a customer, choose it for a reason. Don't choose it just because that's your favorite color. Make sure there's a reason, and you can explain that to your customer as to why you've chosen that particular color. So next, we're going to go to the lab portion, and there'll be a different video for that. But while I'm switching from this video to the next, get out your phones and download Adobe Capture. It's available in the App Store and Google Play. It's a free download. You might have to create an Adobe account so that you'll have a little storage space for your work, but that's what we're going to work in here in just a minute.